Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from Lancaster, Virginia, the latest news and recaps in the world of professional wrestling. Welcome to the Wrestling Artistry Podcast. And now, here's your host, Andre Smith.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 24 of the Wrestling Artistry Podcast. I am your host, Andre Smith, and today I'll be reviewing this past Tuesday's NXT as well as AEW Dynamite. I believe going forward I will be reporting on Dynamite instead of Rampage due to my insane life schedule. But anyway, we'll see how this works out. Anyway, now, first I'm going to review NXT that happened this past Tuesday on October the 11th. The show started off with NXT champion Braun Breaker defeating Javier Bernal. Afterwards, Breaker, JD McDonough, and Ilya Dragunov all faced off against each other. They had a brief brawl, and it ended up with Dragunov aiming to execute his torpedo maneuver onto what looked like it was going to be McDonald, but instead he hit Breaker instead. Nathan Frazier in the best 2 out of 3 series defeated Axiom in a great match to qualify for the NXT North American Championship ladder match that will take place at Halloween Havoc. Valentina Feroz went up against Indy Hartwell, and Hartwell ended up getting the victory after defeating Feroz with a superplex. NXT Tag Champions Pretty Deadly were in their crow's nest area looking all ridiculous. One had a cowboy hat on that looked about 5 sizes too big, and then the other one had one of those hats on with the beverage on each side. He said clearly he was drinking beer, but who knows. Anyway, they were watching the 3-way match to determine who was going to be facing them for the tag team championships. It was Malik Blade and Idris Enofe versus Briggs and Jensen versus the Dyad. At one point, Briggs went to the outside of the ring, threw Blade to the ropes, and bouncing him off, and Briggs clotheslined him, which I thought was a pretty crazy spot. And later on, Joe Gacy, he had to interfere and start interfering in the match, but then Cameron Grimes came out of nowhere and delivered a cave-in onto Gacy, taking him out of the equation. And then after that, Enofe and Blade beat the Dyad to become the No. 1 contenders. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, we have Alba Fire versus JC Jane. Fire hits the Goy Bomb for the win. Afterwards, Fire gets attacked by someone in the crowd in a black hoodie, and that turned out to be none other than Sonya Deville. Her, Jane, and Dolan beat down Fire, putting her through the announce table via Shield triple bomb style. Wesley versus Channing Stacks Lorenzo. Stacks tries to work on Lee's leg. Lee gets the pin after a corkscrew dive. Ooh, I can't talk today. Afterwards, Trick Williams and Carmelo Hayes attack Lee. Or Mensa comes out to say today to help out Lee. We have Kiana James versus Thea Hale. Before the match starts, Robert Stone comes out and berates Hale after she embarrassed him the other week. But Hale delivers a backdrop to Stone, embarrassing him yet again. But Hale will pay for that distraction as James delivers the 401k move for the win. Next up, we had Grayson Waller versus Ilya Dragunov for the main event. As Waller went outside the ring to get ready for one of his signature moves, he got distracted by the spin the wheel, and it started spinning by itself. After that, Dragunov takes the advantage and hits the torpedo for the win. After Dragunov celebrated his victory, Breaker comes out and almost breaks Dragunov in half with a spear to close the show. And that was it for NXT. So I think Halloween Havoc is going to be a pretty good show as well. All right, next I'm gonna go over last night's AEW Dynamite, emanating from the Coca-Cola Coliseum in Toronto, Canada. There, finally made it to Canada. The show starts off with the newest member of the announced team, who is none other than Renee Paquette. She brings Christian out, and after insulting the Toronto Maple Leafs, it introduces Luchasaurus, who is facing none other than Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Throughout the match, Luchasaurus works on Perry's back. Jungle Boy dives over the top rope to deliver a powerbomb to Luchasaurus through a table on the outside. Luchasaurus hits a chokeslam with his left hand, but Perry kicked out. Perry hits the Unprettier, but the big man kicks out barely before the 3 count. Perry hits the snare trap, but Luchasaurus got to the ropes. Perry let Christian Cage distract him one too many times as Luchasaurus grabbed Perry from the top rope and chokeslammed him to the mat. Then Luchasaurus hits a cutthroat for the win. Next up, we had the Factory, consisting of QT Marshall and Nick Comoroto versus Wardlow and Samoa Joe. Joe gets the win for his team with a rear naked choke onto Comoroto. Afterwards, QT gets powerbombed by Wardlow. Then, as the Embassy comes out featuring Brian Cage and Prince Nana, they come out and start running their mouth, getting to stir up some trouble. Oh, Sean Spears makes his return. Haven't seen him in a while. Aligning himself with FTR, who came out earlier, and Wardlow. Next up, we have Swerve Strickland versus Daddy Ass Billy Gunn. Gunn was having some fun earlier in the match, so Swerve soon gets the advantage, working on Billy Gunn's leg. Gunn comes back with a tilt-a-whirl slam. Swerve hits a double stomp, but Gunn kicks out. Swerve gets the pin with the help of hooking the bottom rope for leverage. Afterwards, as the Acclaim and Billy Gunn were about to do their scissoring act, Smart Mark Sterling comes out. Always a buzzkill. And he comes out and says he has the trademark of Scissor Me, telling the Acclaim that they cannot do it, say it anymore and everything, which I don't think this is going to last long. But anyway, we have the line of the night when MJF tells Stokely halfway during his interview to take his Carlton Banks wardrobe wearing ass out of his shop before he gets fired. That was kind of funny. AEW World Champ Jon Moxley and Hangman Adam Page come face to face. Page cut what, in my opinion, was his best promo since being in AEW, being all passionate about how, he's a father and a husband just like Mox, and that at the end of the day, he no matter what he goes through, he comes out like a man and to start to do his thing in the ring. So, I don't know, we could be seeing the best version of Hangman Adam Page to date on AEW. We have a match for the RH World Championship as Lionheart, Chris Jericho, defends against Bryan Danielson. At one point, Danielson had a label lock on, but Jericho countered with the Walls of Jericho. Danielson comes back with his own Walls of Jericho to the chagrin of the Canadian crowd. Jericho hits an attitude adjustment for a 2 count. After the two top rope knee strikes, Danielson goes for a third, but Jericho hits the code breaker for a near fall. Jericho shoves Danielson into referee Paul Turner. As Jericho was about to hit Danielson with the RH belt, RH Period Champion Dan Garcia stops Jericho, only to himself hit Danielson with the belt, showing his loyalty with the Jericho Appreciation Society. Jericho gets a tainted pinfall victory to retain the RH World Championship. Dr. Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter next go up against Hikaru Shida and AEW World Women's Champion Toni Storm. Shida gets the pinfall over Baker. Next up, we had the main event of the evening. It's time for the main event. I don't do it like Mark Henry does, so. Anyway. Main event for the All-Atlantic Championship. Pac defends against freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy. Pac hits a tombstone piledriver on the ramp, almost getting a count-out victory. Cassidy hits the orange punch for a very near fall. Pac had to brutalize her arm, but Cassidy got to the ropes. Pac went for the bell hammer, but Danhausen stopped him. Pac laid him out. And then, toward the end, after 2 orange punches, Orange Cassidy finally gets a pinfall and finally wins his first title since being AEW, becoming the new All-Atlantic Champion to close the show. So congratulations to Orange Cassidy getting his very first championship in AEW. Now, let's see. We go on to some wrestling history here. And this day in wrestling history in 1981, first, we have Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito defeat Tony Garea and Rick Martel to win the WWF World Tag Team Championships in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Oh, by the way, these history tidbits are courtesy of PWInsider.com. Anyway, Fuji and Saito defeat the Garea and Martel when Martel had salt thrown in his eyes as he went for a flying body press. This ended Garea and Martel's second title reign. 1985, Ivan and Nikita Koloff defeat the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson for the NWA World Tag Team title in Charlotte, North Carolina. This began the second reign for the Koloffs, who lost the belts to Morton and Gibson 3 months earlier. 1992, Money Incorporated, Ted DiBiase and IRS defeat the natural disasters Typhoon and Earthquake for the WWF Tag Team title in Regina, Saskatchewan to begin their second title reign. Also, in 1997, I messed up on my notes. Anyway, on WCW Nitro, very tag team heavy history here. From Tampa, Florida, saw Rick and Scott Steiner become the 5-time WCW World Tag Team Champions, defeating Scott Hall and Six, who subbed for Kevin Nash. Larry Zbyszko came in as a substitute referee and counted Rick's pin of Hall after a bulldog. All right, that is it for this week in wrestling history, as well as the Wrestling Artistry podcast. Again, this is Andre Smith here, and I'll be back next time for another edition of the Wrestling Artistry podcast. And until then, fans, so long for now.